So friends, for today's video, I wanted to take 5 different books that have multiple special editions and then pit those special editions against each other. I think all these special editions are fantastic in their own ways, which I wanted to showcase by not only showing them here where you can kind of get an idea of frame of reference for size, colors, those sorts of things, but I wanted to also go more in depth and give you a better look at the page art, the interior art, the naked hardback designs, reversible dust jacket artwork, every little thing that makes these special editions special. I wanted to make sure that we got a really in-depth look at. The 5 books that we're going to be looking at, actually some additional books as some of these are series, but the 5 selections would include The Sword of Kaigen, Bonesmith, the Bridge Kingdom duology, the Cruel Prince trilogy, and the Red Rising trilogy. But all of that said, let's jump into it. I have some enormous gaps on my shelf right now because I have the 2 special editions of Sword of Kaigen. I know a lot of people were aware of one of these special editions. I don't know that as many people even realized that there was another, and both are gorgeous. Both kind of went in a different direction. So we have the first one from Page and Wick. I do think that the design of this is absolutely stunning. I think it captures the main characters really beautifully here in the front. The setting is captured wonderfully. The pages themselves match obviously the front, which I think is a plus because sometimes this matches the front but not the book itself when you remove the dust jacket. Other times it matches the removed dust jacket version of the hardback, but not the cover, so sometimes it can clash. This is extremely cohesive, I think, from front to back. Also, this company, because they're called Page and Wick, this actually came with a candle, and it is one of the best smelling candles. At the top, you can see we have just solid blue and same as on the bottom. As I said, I will go more in depth with all of the special features of this, but I'm just going to show that portion in this, and then we'll go ahead and switch to the Wraithmarked edition. This one, I think, showcases a certain duel that is a very notable moment within the story really well in its artwork on the front. Also has beautiful colors. I really like this scene and this art style quite a lot. I do like the more prominent blue within this, as I do find that so much of this is water oriented, and blue to me brings that out really well. The pages themselves are a gorgeous, shiny, actual page, because there are some where they say they're going to have this effect and then it's just sort of like a glittery silver and it doesn't look the same, whereas this, they did really make it glisten. It looks so pretty. And as you go into the back, it has this character here but zoomed in a little bit more, as well as a quote. So that's just a first sneak peek look at these 2. We'll go ahead and dive into a more in-depth look. I do really want to know for all of these which ones are the winners for you. And I also would be curious to know if you've read them and you want to add that in, because I think it'd be kind of interesting for people that haven't read these to say which ones they like the most and see if there's a difference, because maybe the people that don't have specific expectations for what they want represented within the special editions, they might just look at the aesthetics of it all. Whereas people who do have expectations, they might forego the aesthetic and they might care more about what is being portrayed on the cover, the artwork, which quotes are pulled, those sorts of things. So I would love to know not only which ones do you end up liking more than the others, but if you've read them versus if you have not. the first selection, I do think both books are beautiful. I do really like the art style of the Wraithmarked edition, but I do think the Page and Wick edition, there's something about it that is just so notable. I think that the spine is prettier on the shelf than the Wraithmarked one, but both are gorgeous, and I'm really glad that that book in particular has gotten some special editions because it absolutely deserves all the special edition treatment. Next up, we have Bonesmith by Nikki Palpretto. These are both going to be just for the first book in this duology, as I do not have the second. I don't know that they're even available just yet. So we're just going to look at the first books. For the rest of these that are parts of series, we will look at the entirety of the series. We'll go ahead and start with the Fairy Loot Special Edition. If you don't know, this artwork, while absolutely gorgeous, and this is one of my favorite cover artists, it is actually the same cover art that is on the original. The difference, though, is that Fairy Loot has taken the artwork and slightly tweaked and enhanced some of the colors. So it does stand out a little bit more than it would on the regular edition. For me, I almost feel like docking some points though for not having their own design on the cover, but I also understand not changing it because it is so good and it does so well represent the character, the bone armor itself. I think that the kind of creepy imagery in the background is perfect. So while I want to dock points for lack of originality, I also am like, I get it though. But I think what I really enjoyed about this is the fact that they kept that artwork on the edges. This is one of the few books that I will often actually have the edges faced out. I know it's a pet peeve for some people, not a pet peeve for me. I couldn't care less how other people like to arrange their shelves, but I do know that some people don't really like seeing edges out. They prefer seeing spines, but when you compare this spine to this artwork, I just think that this is so cool. So I do really like the pages. They absolutely stand out. I can't tell though, there's a part of me that thinks, well, if you were going to use that for the pages, maybe you could have done something different for the cover. But regardless, it does look great and I do really like it. And then the next one would be from the Bookish box. I was kind of surprised that they did an edition of this, as they typically do not do books that are this fantasy leaning. I find most of the time they're more fantasy romance leaning, but I do like their editions when there happens to be a book I'm interested in, and I was really excited when I saw they were doing a Bonesmith edition because I really quite like what they went with. So they kept that very notable green color, which I think was a plus, and it does make it so that these books, they look like they go together and they just look like a different version of the same book, which is what they are. So I really like this style, even though I'm mostly going to save the extra perks type of things for when we go and do a cutaway. I do just have to note the fact that this is also the naked hardback, or it's a very close version of it. This is kind of just a normal skull, and then this is an enhanced skull, and it looks so cool, and that shine that you get as it goes across the light, I think is amazing. I love, love, love the naked hardback for this one. I think it's so cool. The pages, though, are not quite, I think, as phenomenal as the other one. It's not really a competition. The pages on the other one are really great. These are pretty simple, but they work because you already have a pretty intense cover, so I think it makes sense. So while the pages are on the simpler side, I do think it's fitting for this. But both of these, I think, are absolutely gorgeous editions. Both match the book really, really well. Both do have really great art styles. Since there was such a notable green on the Bonesmith covers, we'll go ahead and segue to Cruel Prince and start with the Fairy Loot edition of these, as they also have a really beautiful green. And I do think green is a really great choice for this trilogy because it is Fae inspired and it's very atmospheric. I do think that it feels like the setting is so alive around you and so vibrant and colorful, but there is something to the plant life of it all that I think really stands out. Just looking at the entirety of the trilogy first, we'll go ahead and see the spines. They're not the most stunning spines I've ever seen, but they are still very pretty. I think where these really shine though would be their front covers. They did come with no dust jackets. It's just the naked hardbacks, which I know a lot of people actually prefer. We'll go ahead and take a look at them individually. The first book, The Cruel Prince, has an upside down acorn. Once again, I do think that's very fitting for the story. And then on the back, you see the same thing. So it does have the same image front and back. I think I would have liked maybe if they had done something a little bit different, but it is really pretty and I think it looks really nice. You also have this on the edges. I think this green, for my taste, is maybe a little extra vibrant. I think maybe a slightly darker green would have looked a little better and might have been a little more fitting, but I still think it works. I do feel though that it almost looks like someone colored this in with a marker. So it's still gorgeous, but it doesn't look quite as professional and polished as I think certain other special edition pages do. Here is the second book, The Wicked King. Once again, we have the same design on the front and the back. This particular one happens to be a knife. And then for the last one, we have the snake. Very fitting if you know about what transpires in this third installment. The snake is, I think, a cool design. Snakes were very in for a while on covers, and this one I think managed to not look exactly like every single other snake, because it wasn't just that snakes were in, it just looked like it was the same exact style snake, you could say, as far as the way in which it was positioned. And I do think the positioning of this was done nicely. These are great. It's not even a competition though for me. I think that the other editions that I have of these are just, you can't compete. When this company makes a special edition of something, it's gonna be better probably than every other edition of it. So even though these are beautiful, and I do really adore these, and I think that they're stunning and they are representative of the trilogy, LitJoy Crate just knocks it out of the park. These are also printed right on a naked hardback for the whole trilogy. This actually has a box as well, so there is that protection, and it did include, there is a fourth book that's not necessarily a direct sequel. This is a trilogy that is completed within that third installment, but there is another one that kind of goes with it, and it's right up there, so they included that. I'm not gonna allow that to impact how I feel about this, although I do appreciate that. But I just think these stand out enough on their own. So they already have these absolutely stunning spines. They certainly have that kind of fairy tale feel. Storybook. They look like old, beautiful storybooks. And the colors, I don't know if the lighting here is really capturing it. It's capturing the gold very well, but the colors are so, so pretty. Such great choices. What I was saying about the Fairy Loot ones with that green on the pages being a little extra bright, feeling like a marker, I think these have what I was trying to describe, where the colors, there's just a depth to them that I don't know that the Fairy Loot one really has as much. But the front covers, I mean, is storybook not the perfect way to describe these? So this is what the front cover looks like of the first one. Here is the back. So what I was describing with the other set where I said I wish that the front and back look slightly different, I think this was a good way to go about it. It's not like it is an entirely new image necessarily, but it did tweak it so it wasn't the same thing depending on which side you're looking at. So this is the first one, it says Cruel Prince. The perks, when I show you these perks, oh my gosh. First off, it's annotated by the author. So these already, they're just so beautiful. Here's the pages. They're a beautiful, beautiful gold. Doesn't it remind you of, I think it's the old Sleeping Beauty movie when it first starts and these pages are opening to this tale. That's what this reminds me of. I just think that they're absolutely gorgeous. Here is the second one, The Wicked King. This one is more water oriented, hence this design on the cover. This blue is so pretty, that kind of teal green blue. I love it. And then here is the back. Once again, beautiful, beautiful gold. And then the Queen of Nothing. Both sets have ribbons, by the way, if you just noticed that these have ribbons. The other set did have ribbons as well. And this one, here's the back. Serpent, again, once again, very fitting. And the gold. But when we do our cutaway and you see all of the extra things in the interior, if you're already on the fence, I don't think you will be once you see all the extra things that this one has. But maybe you still prefer the Fairy Loot edition, which is completely fine. But we'll go ahead and do, once again, one last look at the spines here, and then one last look at the spines here. The next set we'll look at would be the Bridge Kingdom duology, and it's actually once again going to be the Bookish Box and Fairy Loot. I do want to note that the Bridge Kingdom series is set up where it's kind of a series of duologies, and the Bookish Box has done the same style for the second duology also. So they're actually usually behind this chair. You don't really see them when I'm filming as much. But I do really appreciate that they continued on with the series, whereas Fairy Loot maybe someday will, but thus far they've only done the first duology. If they come out with a second duology, I think that would be great. But I also think they're going to run into an issue where they have decided to go about theirs by doing different colors on each of the books in the duology, whereas the Bookish Box kept a consistent color, which I find is probably going to look more cohesive when they're all lined up. I think if Fairy Loot had done one color for the Bridge Kingdom duology and for the next duology, if they did a different color, that'd be one thing. But I think doing a different color for every book is going to make it lose some of its distinction between the duologies. But it's also going to be almost like too distinct between each book within the duology, if that makes sense. I'm going to show the Fairy Loot ones first. They have, of course, a similar art style, which I think works to have for the first and second books. We will take a look at what the naked hardbacks look like when we do our cutaway. Here are the pages. I do like the pages quite a bit, especially the blue. I think it really stands out with having a darker blue and then that teal green blue as the pop of color. This one is pretty. I don't feel that this pinkish purple really represents this story as well. The first book, it's a lot more water oriented. The second book's actually a lot more desert oriented. So I almost think they could have done something like the UK Strange the Dreamer editions, which would be blue and then this deep orange. I think maybe that could have been fitting. I think yellow is a hard color to pull off, so I don't know if it would have looked as good with the blue. I almost think, though, they could have gone with a more faded color palette, kind of like what LitJoy Crate did for the Cruel Prince trilogy, or excuse me, Folk of the Air trilogy, where they had those kind of muted but deep colors. I think they could have done something like that so that you could have incorporated a blue, green, teal color, and then more of like a yellowish gold color to represent ocean and then desert. I think that could have worked. I think this just kind of feels like they just picked some colors. I could be wrong about that. Maybe I just don't know the idea that went behind that pinkish purple, but I do think that the color choice, it just feels kind of random, and because it's not cohesive across, it does sort of bring it down a little bit. I wish they had just kept the blue or tried to represent what the setting is showing you within the story. This other set, though, is just green, which is fine. In the more ocean area, it's also kind of jungle-esque, so I think the green works with the Bookish Box's additions. These do tend to have their own style regardless, so you might notice that these do resemble the Bonesmith cover. I'm okay with that. I do prefer them to have a little bit more individuality within the specific books that they're representing, but I do like these editions. I think that the artwork on the covers goes alongside the books themselves. Here you see the ships because it is more island oriented, and then this one, there is something to be said of the fact that it's the trader queen, so there is that royalty factor, and having the crown on the cover I think is fitting. Maybe I have heard that purple is more of an indication of royalty and nobility, so maybe that's where that pink purple was coming from, but I don't think that's quite the shade, and I think I'm maybe giving the Fairy Loot edition color choice a little more credit. But as far as the pages themselves go, they are pretty simple, a little lackluster. I think they could have done more with the pages, but I do like these editions, and as I've said, they do continue these into the next duology. Last for today, we have Red Rising versus Red Rising, both by Fairy Loot. So it's old versus new. This one is tough for me because I do have a soft spot for the old editions, especially because they have this really beautiful cohesiveness across the spines, which I think is a really cool effect. I wish more companies would do that when they made special editions of an entire series, but the new editions have some extra perks that the old ones did not, which we'll get into. But we'll go ahead and start with the new, actually, because maybe you're more likely to have seen the old. The new ones did keep the same design. Actually, I think I'm going to go about this a little different. I think I'm going to hold up them next to each other per book. So this is the old, this is the new. I like that they kept this same design, and then they just did something a little bit different. This almost feels like it has the sleeve that this one would have had it come with the sleeve. Fairy Loot used to be more likely to put out editions with no sleeves. Now it seems like they put out editions that have sleeves but also have great naked hardbacks underneath. Depends probably from person to person if that's a pro or a con, because I don't know too many people that love dust jackets. I think most people prefer things on the naked hardback, But I like that they give you the option of having either the sleeve or the naked hardback as the one you might get. But these are just so cool, and it is embossed, so you do feel the texture of this, which I think is great. We will take a look at the naked hardback of these in the cutaway. As far as the pages, this one actually has something going on. The other is just red. The other one matches its color, but otherwise there's not much to it. This one kind of has more of this space feel, and I do like that it goes across the top, because a lot of times you will just see a color block on the top and bottom, like what you saw for the Page and Wick Sword of Kaigen, even though you'll have something here on this side. So I like that they kind of continued that up into the top. Looking at Golden Sun, once again, they kept the design from the center of this to be featured here, but bigger. I do think that the red and black looked really good on the new one for Red Rising. There's something about this, though, that I think looks a little more generic, whereas I think something about this stands out to me. I do not like, though, the color choice that they went with on the edges. I don't know why they decided to go with this sort of purple color. I don't know if maybe they originally wanted to do yellow and for whatever reason they couldn't, because that happens sometimes, but I bought those secondhand, so I never got any emails with any updates about any changes or anything like that. But I do think I actually kind of have a soft spot for the way that this one looks over this one. And then for the third one, here's what the blue looks like. I do think we get kind of a return to the cool factor that the blue and black has that I just lost a little bit with the gold and black. The new ones are definitely going to have the edge when it comes to the extra perks. As I was saying before, when you take off the sleeve, you have a naked hardback, you have interior art, and we did see that there's more going on with the pages, but I still think that the spine having connection across is such a cool feature of the originals that I don't know, I just have a soft spot for these old ones. Here's quotes on the back as well. That's it for special edition versus special edition. If you'd like to see me do this same style video again, I would be more than happy to do so. And then if you'd like to see a continuation of the kind of deep dives into one specific book or series and all of their editions, not just special editions, but foreign editions as well, let me know. I'd be happy to do another. I have wanted to do one for Strange the Dreamer for so long, as that duology has some of the most beautiful editions across various different countries and special editions, so I would love to do that for Strange the Dreamer. I just don't know if the interest is there and that people really care that much, but I love doing this kind of stuff, as I just think books are so beautiful, and I love when you can combine the wonder that are books with amazing artists, and then you get this beautiful combination. If you didn't quite catch who did which edition while I was going through them, I'll have that information in the description bar so that you can reference back to it. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.